This weekend, I saw Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk. It's a film of unrelenting tension, gut-wrenching Luftwaffe passes, and gritty ensemble performances. It's a visceral experience of the desperation of the British troops trying to escape the German advance that should really be experienced in theatres before its relegation to home viewing later in the year. In an interview with Kevin McCarthy of Fox 5, Christopher Nolan said of the film,
I didn't want to tell the story in words. I didn't want the theatrics of people telling the audience why you should care about them. I wanted to care about them just because of the physical situation that they were in. And in that way build up a subjective experience of the events at Dunkirk that would hopefully have a cumulative quality, emotional quality through the course of the film, and pay off at the end of the film, without ever being overly theatrical or sentimentalizing, these real life events.
And the result is a film which isn't about the story, it's a film about the experience, which to me feels like a different approach for Christopher Nolan, so I was fascinated to see how this affected Hans Zimmer's approach to scoring the film. There are going to be spoilers here, folks, so if you're a film score nerd like me, then I would suggest watching the movie before you watch this video, because I don't want to ruin it for you. But if you want to stick around, then let's continue. The film begins with a familiarly Zimmery sound world. We're greeted with dreamy, reverby wind sounds before the introduction of what is becoming a signature of this Nolan-Zimmer collaboration, a pulsating bass with an ominous ticking sound. Incidentally, this time recorded from a watch belonging to Nolan himself. This texture propels us into the sensory onslaught that's awaiting us for the next hour and a half. The indistinct sounds with so much reverb add to this sense of abnormality, like we're in the eye of a storm and there's chaos around us. To me, parts of this score felt similar to moments in the Dark Knight score, undoubtedly one of the most iconic scores to come out of this director-composer partnership, and one where Zimmer really demonstrates his affinity with writing tension music. Both the Dunkirk and the Dark Knight scores make a lot of use of semitones to build tension, but I think Zimmer is using semitones to give us different information in each score. In Dunkirk, I think the semitone is used to give us this sense of unrest that comes from using such a close interval that never quite resolves, in the same way that the soldiers are so close to home, but can't quite make it. It's a painful, emotive musical mirror to the narrative that unfolds. Using semitones above and below the note, as we hear in Supermarine, also feels a bit like the fearsome sound of an air raid siren. Check out this other siren motif in the horns later in the same cue. Undoubtedly, my favourite moment in the whole film from a musical point of view comes about 2/3 of the way through. We've seen three main threads being woven together, and the whole thing is becoming increasingly taut. There's a moment where Kenneth Branagh's Commander Bolton is standing on the end of the mole when he sees the small flotilla of requisitioned vessels approaching the beach. After almost an hour and a quarter of blistering intensity, I found myself noticing the climactic nature of this moment and wondering what Zimmer would do to give us the emotional payoff that it needed. We're led into this moment with 4 minutes of unrelenting musical tension. Zimmer uses a shepherd tone, a musical illusion where you hear a sound that seems to be continually rising, to subconsciously wrench up the intensity. Then, as we are shown the flotilla approaching the shore, the B-flat drone which is concealing the shepherd tone gives way to a beautiful E-flat major chord, which, As the score continues, we quickly realise isn't just an E flat major chord, it's a stretched out, relief-filled version of Nimrod, the 9th variation from Elgar's Enigma Variations, an anthem of British wartime remembrance. Check it out. It came as such a pleasant antidote to everything we'd heard before. The entire score up to this point had been a series of pulses and drones and sirens. Or had it? Perhaps part of the reason I enjoyed this reveal so much, apart from the fact that Nimrod is so ingrained into my British cultural psyche, was because Zimmer was subtly drip-feeding us bits of the theme without us noticing. Here's the clip from the opening that I played you earlier. Notice what the strings are playing? It's mixed to sound far away, so it's quiet with a bit of reverb, like the sound of Britain calling to the soldiers across the channel. And it's there, right from the beginning. So, while this might not be my favourite ever Christopher Nolan movie, or my favourite Hans Zimmer score, there's no denying the poignancy of one of Britain's greatest living film directors working together with one of Germany's most successful film composers to tell a story about the most horrific war our two countries have ever been involved in. The result is a cinematic experience which immerses the audience in over 100 minutes of the terror and intensity of the Dunkirk evacuation. The icing on the cake is for this German composer to speak of peace and safety and home by referencing music written by one of the greatest British composers who has ever lived. Guys, thanks so much for checking out this video. I hope it was enjoyable and interesting. If you have enjoyed me doing this sort of review type thing, let me know, because I quite like to do more of these if it's interesting. Yeah, I'll see you next time. Cheers.